everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be repotting the Cattleya Violacea that I filmed the unboxing video of yesterday. Now this is quite a big orchid, so this is going to be quite an involved unpotting. I say unpotting. Really what I'm going to have to do is cut this plastic pot away and kind of gradually remove this. Okay, it's coming away, so this might be doable. Now, I've done some research on the Cattleya Violacea, and apparently it only starts new roots on the new growths when the new growths are quite mature, so when they're quite a bit bigger than they are currently. So this actually probably isn't the ideal time to repot. To show you some of the new growths, it's got about 6 new growths on it. But I also have to weigh up how I can keep it in my environment. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to struggle to keep it hydrated enough in this sort of setup. I don't know how quickly this is going to dry out. It's going to need repotting at some point. I could wait for the new growths to be a bit bigger, but how I'm going to keep it in the meantime is another question. It doesn't stand up. It just sort of falls over. It's not particularly stable the way it's grown. And as those new growths do start to push out roots, obviously they're not in any media, so I'm making the decision to repot it now, which might not be the most advisable decision, but I've kind of weighed up my options and I would like to get it out of this as soon as possible. Now, the Cattleya Violacea is native to lowland tropical rainforests in the Amazon, so it's much more temperature sensitive. It likes much warmer conditions, likes to be kept moist from what I've read. So I'm going to repot it into semi-hydro with LECA and see how we go with it. You can see that we've got quite a few good roots here, which hopefully we can salvage because they're not inside the whatever this is. Coconut husk, I guess. I think it's coconut husk. I think it's a block of coconut husk. It kind of comes away when you pull at it. It's quite soft. And I don't know what bugs are lurking inside there, so I just want to get it out of this. So all of these roots are dead, so they can all be cut away, and I'm just going to have to go through it bit by bit and quite slowly. And I can see a little snail on here, so it's a good job in repotting. Snail has been removed. But yeah, I'm going to just take my time and go through it and try and salvage as many of the old roots as possible. When you repot Cattleyas though, quite often they will dump the old roots. With the hybrids that I have in my experience with semi-hydro, they don't, but this is a species, so it's going to be a little bit less vigorous potentially than some of the complex hybrids that I've got experience with, so we're going to have to wait and see really. So let's get started on the repotting, which is probably going to take a while, so I'll end up fast forwarding through a lot of this I think. So first we're going to cut off the old basket. Oh, there's a really gross spider in there. I don't like him. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm gonna get rid of him. So I put him outside. So I'm gonna remove this basket first if we can. And I think most of these roots are dead. This has been soaking in CalMag for about 2 hours to really try and, I found that if you kind of soak the roots as much as possible before you repot, it increases your success with the repot because at least the plant has had some nutrition and some hydration before you put it into its new environment. I'm gonna have to be a bit ruthless with this, unfortunately. These are all dead. This is okay. Oh, I've got one live one. I've got some live ones that are just starting to climb down into the bottom of this thing. Luckily these are all hollow and squishy, so I don't have to feel too bad about getting rid of those. So with the Cattleyas that I've already got, they're very willing to put out new roots, but obviously that's dependent on having new growths. So they're also very quick to dump any roots that are damaged. So this is a bit of a nightmare repot. Okay. Now we have to get this top layer off, but I think I'm just going to have to write these all off as dead. The older roots of older growths tend to die off with Cattleyas anyway. So I'm going to try and salvage what I can, because it's this side you can see that's got all the live roots where the newer growths have formed. This plastic seems to be quite old and brittle. Okay, so I've got it off where the dead roots are. Need to try and keep the live roots. Now I've damaged this root a bit, so that might not make it, but we're going to leave it on because what it can absorb between when it dies and when it grows new roots might make all that difference. So this is like, it's coming apart really easily. This might not be as difficult as anticipated. Inside this it's just like mush, where it's starting to decompose. I am just getting covered in bits of this mushy cocoa husk bark stuff. All the roots in the middle are dead. So this is the front end that we're trying to be really careful with. I don't know what you would do with this long term. I think eventually you would just have to, because of how, like, see how squishy this is, and like just holding on to so much moisture. I think because it's breaking down, that's why it's holding on to so much moisture in the middle. I think we're almost there. And then I can start cutting off the dead roots. Unfortunately I have damaged a few of the live ones. I think that was kind of inevitable. My advice would be to people to wait to repot with these ones until you can see new roots starting to emerge, but I just didn't want to keep it like that. So now I need to go through and sort out the live from the dead roots. I'm going to sterilise my scissors because obviously I used them for cutting into that. Now I know that there's some debate as to whether to use a flame with sterilising or just the alcohol. I personally just use 70% rubbing alcohol, which is isopropyl alcohol, to be ultra safe in terms of bacteria or any fungal parts that you're introducing. I would probably say flaming as well is going to give you a better result, but I've never flamed my scissors. I just used the alcohol and I've never had any issues with doing that, so that's the way I'm going to kind of carry on doing it. But if you really want to be absolutely ultra 100% aseptic, then yes, definitely sterilise with alcohol and a flame. However, we're not doing this in tissue culture hoods, so this isn't aseptic anyway. We're just trying to make sure that we're not introducing more bacteria than necessary into open wounds or fungal spores. Now this one looks bad, but it's really firm up until about here, at which point it's dead. And take the end of it off. It's not the best root. It's stained where it's been in this coconut husk or whatever that was. So yeah, I use just alcohol. At the end of the day, we're not doing things aseptically anyway. If we're culturing orchid seeds, yes, absolutely, you need to keep things 100% sterile. Alcohol, flame, tissue culture hood, because you're then incubating them in ideal conditions for bacteria and fungal contaminants to also grow. With dead roots, you're cutting into dead tissue anyway. You're not introducing a fresh open wound into live tissue. If this was a plant with new roots already starting, I would probably take off everything from the old growths that looked a little bit dodgy. We need to leave on what we can for this orchid. And I will probably unpot this when the new roots start to push out from those new growths, and take off what I've left on. With semi-hydro, unpotting isn't really an issue ever, just so easy. Okay, so I've left on everything that was firm, even if it didn't seem to be in the best shape. You can see we've got a lot of roots at the top here that are green, and then they kind of were broken. This is where they were hanging over the edge of that pot, where that pot went to about here, and obviously they've probably been shipped from overseas and been damaged in that transport, because they didn't look in any way like they'd been damaged in this transport. There were no broken roots in the box or anything. So yeah, I've even left on some kind of questionable looking roots. If they're still firm, I've left them on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and spray this down with hydrogen peroxide 3% to get rid of any snails or snail eggs, because I did find that little tiny snail when I was unpotting, which when there's one, there's probably more. So I know this says that it's orchid mist, but it's not. I just really like these spray bottles. It's hydrogen peroxide 3%. And you can buy this in human pharmacies. You can often buy like the 6% and dilute it down, which is what I do because it's better value. I usually leave them for about 15 minutes. And while I'm leaving that, I'm going to get rid of this box of coconut husk and dead roots. Now, I've made up a solution of 50% lemon juice. It doesn't matter if you use fresh or the concentrated kind that you can buy in the bottles, and 50% distilled water. And I noticed the leaves were quite dirty, so I'm just going to clean them off and clean off any dried sheaths. Now, I sprayed this with my regular insect killer yesterday, which is a soap-based solution. But you need to get rid of the dried sheaths as well, and just give the leaves a clean off, because they're looking it looks like it's been sprayed with an insect killer. The lemon juice acts as a mild acid, so it kind of breaks up any calcium or mineral deposits that have been left on the leaves that give you that kind of washed white coating. And it does it much better than just water alone. So that's how much dirt's come off. I've used both sides. And this is mainly aesthetic. However, it also helps with photosynthesis, because if the leaves are coated in a kind of layer of dirt or dust or the white kind of mineral deposits, it means that the sunlight doesn't get to them quite as efficiently. So actually, if they become very dirty, you end up with a plant that has a kind of slightly reduced capacity to photosynthesize, because it's not getting as much light. Now I'm just going to remove some of the dried sheaths. Only do this when they're dried, obviously, but it just means any mealybugs or anything that's hiding behind the dried sheaths you can get a direct look at and attack, rather than having them just hide there. You can see where it's got odd spots of damage, particularly on this pseudobulb, which looks like it might have had a bit of an infection in the past, possibly, or a deficiency, but that's all dried. It's not oozing. I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I'm fairly happy that that is something that's happened in the past and isn't going to spread anymore. One thing that I'm going to keep an eye on is this little patch here, because that was a little bit oozy, and I've treated it with hydrogen peroxide 3%. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and obviously if it starts getting any worse, then that pseudobulb might have to come off, but it's only a small spot, and it's potentially a bacterial infection. So we've rinsed off the root system at the sink, and I've cleaned up the orchid. So next we're going to repot. So I'm going to pop this into semi-hydro with LECA. So I've already prepared the LECA by soaking it overnight and giving it a few washes. This pot is just a clear decorative home container that I got from an online store. I'll link it down below. I quite like it for big Cattleyas. I've got my other rather large bifoliate Cattleya and one, and it just helps with, obviously they've got quite a spreading rhizome, so you can see the direction of growth. So I put these smaller pseudobulbs at the back. It's got new growths coming on both sides actually, so just have to wait and see. More coming off this side though, so put it more towards the back there. And I'm going to stake it with these clear stakes. You can often get them with new orchids with the nursery tag on, for example from Inca Orchids, they come with these, and I quite like them because they're plastic. You can pop them into semi-hydro and they're not going to break down, whereas the wooden stakes, they bleed their dye and they eventually do break down. And the ties I'm using are just plant ties that are covered with a like a plastic coating, so the wire inside doesn't damage the plant. And that'll just help to secure it until the new roots come through. Now we're just going to fill it up with LECA. So that is my Cattleya Violacea all repotted into semi-hydro with LECA. As you can see, I've tried to keep the rhizome above the LECA, and the new growths there are kind of more up above. It's all been cleaned up, all the old sheaths removed, leaves cleaned off, and hopefully that'll do well. I'll keep you updated on its progress. I'm going to have to make a separate video for the other two that I got in the unboxing yesterday, because this has taken a lot longer than I anticipated. Obviously the new growths are only just starting, so if it takes a while to put out new roots we might have a bit of an issue. I'll keep you updated, and what I will do is pop it onto a heat mat, and because it's a warm grower, and when you first pop into semi-hydro any warm growers, it's a slightly cooler area around the root system because of the clay media and the evaporative cooling effect. So if you pop them onto a heat mat, they just adapt that a little bit quicker, and I usually give seaweed extract as well when they first go in, just to try and really speed up that new growth process, to accelerate it with the hormones in the seaweed and the heat that you're applying to the root zone, which will help to speed up new root growth. But obviously that's limited by the fact that we need to wait for it to push out these new growths first. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!